Hello, everyone. It's Debbie Potts recording in my outside beautiful backyard studio here in the summertime. And I'm excited to talk to Autumn, the founder of the amazing company, Paleo Valley. They also own what I just started ordering, Wild Pastures meat delivery service. And then they have a new burger place in Boulder. And I'm hoping I can get her to open one in North San Diego and Encinitas or somewhere in Solana Beach because we could use one. So we're going to talk about her story, but also kind of why they have Paleo Valley, why is it so popular, and why protein is so important for women. As I keep sharing on my Instagram, the Low Carb Athlete, and Facebook, Dr. Gabrielle Leon's information. I really believe in what Dr. Leon is saying in her Leon protocol and often implement these guidelines into my clients' protocols to start with finding their right macro ratio of protein, healthy fats, and real quality carbohydrates to get a nutrient dense diet for the athlete. So I'm working on matching their nutrition, their fueling with their exercise, their training and racing, and working on eating real food, eat locally, eat by the season, but really prioritize your protein in each meal. And Dr. Gabrielle Leon has her Leon protocol is what is your ideal body weight? Say you want to weigh, make it simple, 150 pounds, and you should get 150 grams of protein per day. Now, 30 to 50 grams of protein is what we need to strive for each meal. So do the math. Depending on what your goal macros are for protein intake, get your healthy fats in and get the carbohydrates in more at nighttime if you're exercising in the morning and you are maybe going a little bit easier day, you don't need as many carbohydrates. So timing in your carbs with your exercise is important. But protein, we want to all focus on. You know, everyone varies on the fat percentage and the carb percentage, but protein we all need. We are aging athletes. We're exercising all the time. I want to build muscle, get leaner and stronger as I age, and live the second half of my life as my best life, right? Hopefully you do as well. We're training ourselves now, but training for our future self. So what do we need to do? The organ of longevity is muscle. How do you build muscle? Lift heavy weights after you build your foundation and eat more protein. So 30 to 50 grams, even if you get 20 grams per meal. So if you're trying to get 150 grams a day, how do you do that? Plan it out. Do the math, read your ingredients, your protein list on your foods, and focus on, say, breakfast, 50 grams, lunch, 50 grams, dinner, 50 grams or less. I can't eat a lot of food. I stop eating actually weekdays, Sunday to Thursday. I don't eat normally after 4 o'clock because I go to bed at 8 and I can't eat 3 hours before bed. So I do essential amino acids to get a little bit more protein. So say 10 grams of amino is equal to 20 grams, or sorry, 5 opposite of that. So 10 grams essential aminos is 5 grams of protein. So figure out where you can get your protein in. Bone broth. Summertime, I don't really want a hot cup of bone broth, but wintertime, I'll do bona fide provisions. That's about 10 grams of protein. Maybe you're having, try not to snack. I don't like my clients snacking because often they're snacking because they're not hungry. It's more mindless eating versus mindful eating, but work on eating enough protein in your meals so you are full and satisfied for 3 to 4 hours until your next meal. Now, protein in the morning for me might be a shake. Depends if I did a workout in the morning at 6 a.m., a run, and then I'm going swimming, master swimming at lunchtime. That's where I experiment. So let's talk about protein, how to get it in, how Paleo Valley can help us, and Wild Pastures. So let's bring in Autumn to hear more.
Is this video and audio? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, everyone. I've got Autumn Smith on the podcast to talk about Paleo Valley and Wild Pastures and why we need to eat quality meat and all about protein because I'm all about the aging athlete and improving our health as a future self and listening to what Dr. Gabrielle Leon's sharing in her science. And I really wanted to talk to Autumn to share her why, her purpose, and her passion and her drive because she's got so much going on. So Autumn, thanks for coming on the Low Carb Athlete Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor. I love what you're doing and just excited to be here.
Well, thanks. I just love, we're just talking about your people. I met them at KetoCon. They were nice to include me in dinner with Sean Baker and Gabrielle Leon and Cynthia Thurlow and then me. These amazing people in our industry that are really leading the way of why we need to eat more protein as we get older. And especially for athletes, they're doing so much cardio, endurance training is so catabolic, and how important it is as we're over 40 and I'm 50 now, why we need to lift heavy weights and eat more protein and really prioritize that in our day for health and longevity. So I really love Paleo Valley and the products you guys have. And we'll talk about Wild Pastures. I just got my first delivery a couple weeks ago and eating that every day and meal prepping and stuff like that. So let's start. What I always like to ask my guests first of what's your why? I mean, you're accomplished so much. So talk about kind of what's the story behind Paleo Valley.
Well, first of all, I have to acknowledge that it's not me accomplishing this. It's my amazing team. I just, for some reason, got a bunch of really smart and passionate people around me. But the reason I started on this path was because I was at 10, I started having digestive issues, irritable bowel syndrome. And the doctors at that time didn't know what to do with me in terms of medication, or they definitely didn't ever say diet could have anything to do with my stomach pain, which in hindsight makes zero sense. But we just did what I took Beano. Then it kind of snowballed as I got into my teenage years, and my gut problems became mental health problems, which we understand there's a connection now. At that time, again, that was something we didn't fully understand. Anxiety, depression. I got kicked out of my parents' house before I even graduated high school. I used substances to kind of calm my anxiety and numb the pain I was in. And I just kind of continued on that path. Luckily, I still had a love for dance, and I became a fitness trainer with Tracy Anderson because I don't know, I was still trying to be well, to be fit. It wasn't until my husband met me that he was like, wow, you're like, it all looks good on the outside, but you're a mess. Like, you are in pain, you have skin breakouts, you feel like a fraud when you go as a celebrity fitness trainer. And so we just decided to try dietary change, which I thought was ridiculous at the time, because I think it was in 2007. Some people on the internet said that they had had success. I think it was Mark Sisson and Lauren Cordain, Rob Wolf, maybe. And it was really a transformational experience. Even within 30 days, all my digestive symptoms went away. And then over the course of the next year, my mental health changed so dramatically that I thought, you know what? I love Tracy Anderson. I love fitness, but I have to understand what just happened to me. Yeah. And so I went back and got my master's. I'm getting my doctorate almost done right now.
Wow.
Just so that I could understand how not only to be fit, but how to be well. And then we went into physical products because we thought, people need the tools, the not highly processed food tools, to have a whole foods diet and live a life that is both busy and healthful. And so that's why we went. And Wild Pastures came after my son, because we had all these relationships with farmers and ranchers who were telling us that the way you raise animals makes all the difference. You can destroy the environment with animals, or you can rehabilitate and restore it. So, and Wild Pastures came to be a meat delivery service so that we could get people the kind of meat that would nourish them and restore the planet for a price they can actually afford, because we knew in order to transform our current system, which I think has a lot of issues, we needed people to be able to buy in if they wanted it, everybody to buy in. And so that's how we got here.
Well, it's kind of similar, but different. My story is an endurance athlete, doing Ironmans and a lot of racing, but I ran my own business and just burnt myself out and created metabolic chaos from the inside out. But it was always what I say now is being fit and healthy from the inside out. Like, I might have looked super lean and strong. I was top in, 11th in my age group in Ironman Hawaii 2012, and then 2013. That, like 6 months later, I have 30 pounds heavier. I had total chaos in my body. Every lab test I can get from naturopaths, it was like, parasites, pathogens, all of it going on. And it's like, that's what my purpose is today, is to help athletes be fit and healthy from the inside out. And what I call the holistic method, we have to coach people on, investigating what's actually going on inside with hidden internal chronic sources of stress with functional lab testing that doctors do not do at all and don't even agree with.
No.
And then, I call the holistic method. I work on nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress management, movement throughout the day, mobility, hydration, gut health, digestion, and happiness, gratitude, play, laughter, oxytocin. And I think that's so important for driven, ambitious athlete or not. If we are that type A, AAA driven, high charging individual, we're going to throw ourselves under the bus and run ourselves out of energy because we just go, go, go. And we have that addicted to busyness and more is better philosophy. So it doesn't matter what type of athlete you are or what your stresses are externally, you can contribute to that beaker of stress. Keep filling it up until there's way too much and you have this overflow. So it sounds like, you understand that what happens and how we don't really understand, oh, why do I have that gut issue? Or, people think diarrhea every day is normal or constipation is normal. It's like, no, there's reasons. So
absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's so interesting because I track my HRV. I'm not wearing my Aura right now, but
mine.
By far the most impactful intervention I have is spending time with the people I love the most. It's funny. I tweak my diet, my sleep and everything. And when it goes up, 20, 15 points, it's always because I had a really nice weekend with social time. Yeah.
Well, that's why I call, moving from Seattle to here, my stress was the way I was, my business, personal training and coaching people and owning a business for 10 years. It's just that go 5 a.m. till 7 p.m. And, I had to move to North San Diego I'm on the computer more. I'm not, training people in person all day long, but I'm outside, I'm in the sunshine, I walk on the beach. I'm just so much more laid back and relaxed and happier person. Now that I changed my whole life. So I think we have to sometimes push pause and reset, reboot our own selves and practice what we preach to get better. So let's talk about protein, because as I said in my intro, Dr. Gabrielle Leon and other people, it was all eat fat, keto. But now finally the pendulum's going, okay, don't forget about protein over here. And what's the organ and longevity? What happens as we get older? Protein and quality of protein, and not just getting, In-N-Out burgers and all the other stuff you can get at the store. But I think, where do you think kind of the curve went from everyone talking keto to eating more protein? Did you kind of see anything there as you went into more protein? And I don't know if you're like, I hate putting labels, eat real food is what I say, but keto, carnivore, paleo, whatever it is, it's eat real food that's nutrient dense. And most of that happens to be from meat.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's funny because I don't ascribe to any one camp. I've tried keto, tried carnivore, but I am whole food. I'm an omnivore. I like having both plants and animals, but yeah, I think it is becoming ever more clear. It's funny timing, right? Because we have these mainstream messages that are saying meat's dangerous and it's killing us and saturated fat it contains and on and on. But at the same time, there's this burgeoning appreciation for protein because muscle is the organ of longevity, just like Dr. Gabrielle Leon teaches us. And when we have more protein in our diet, we aren't as hungry. We can eat fewer calories. We are building lean muscle mass. We actually prevent weight gain after weight loss. I mean, in our neurotransmitters, our brain. I think this was a huge piece of my puzzle is I was under eating protein. It was just never something that I was drawn towards. I believe in hindsight, probably because I had low levels of stomach acid and it was uncomfortable for me to digest. But again, we don't want to just get rid of the protein. We want to fix the digestion, right? Exactly. And I think that without those precursors, the amino acids to our neurotransmitters, my mental health suffered. So I think that protein is, I don't know, it's my favorite macronutrient, which is super nerdy. And you don't really see people demonize it except for in the longevity space, which I think that research has some limitations, but we know that there's this protein leverage hypothesis. Have you heard it? Have you talked about it on the show?
No, not yet. I don't think
okay, cool. So Rob Wolf put this on my radar, but there were definitely two other researchers who came up with this hypothesis that we are in fact looking for amino acids when we're eating. And so if we don't meet a certain requirement of amino acids, we will continue to overeat in order to find them, right? And so when we have the protein that we require, it turns off that desire to eat. It improves satiety. And you'll see that in a lot of the research. And not only will you improve satiety, you'll feel fuller longer. Like I said, you can burn more calories even when you're sleeping. It's crazy. Of course, you're going to perform better because you're going to be able to build more lean muscle mass. So I just think it's so dangerous for us to be cutting out animal products because they are a very unique and important source of protein and the bioavailability bioavailable nutrients that it contains. And so, yeah, I'm on this mission to help people find the nuance. I was at my doctor the other day, and it was the first time I had gone to her, and she found out I was in nutrition, and she said, "Oh, you eat meat?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. And I think we should. And I think it's really hard to get all the nutrients you need when you don't." And she said, "Wow, that's a refreshing perspective from someone who studies nutrition," which I was just, I don't know. It speaks to how much misinformation there is around this topic. But yes, I think protein is kind of having a moment, and it should. The number one thing I see, and I work with mostly women, is they undereat protein. They're not even hitting 100 grams of protein in a day. And I say, if you're not at 100, and especially if you're an athlete, you need to bump that up. 100 grams of protein.
Well, that's what I was saying in the intro. What Dr. Gabrielle Leon says is your goal body weight, and say it's 120 pounds, you need 100 grams of protein a day. And then what I do for my clients, like, okay, what's your goal body weight? Let's break that up. And then, all right, how are you going to get that? If it's 30 to 50 grams of protein a day, people can't. And they're like, "Oh, I can't eat that much." I'm like, yeah, that's a point.
Yeah.
You can't overeat protein. You're so full and satisfied. So breaking it up, maybe 20, 30 grams is better for some people that are smaller, and be able to digest it though. Because going back to what you said before, is a huge thing as a nutritional therapy practitioner and I'm an FDN practitioner where I do the functional lab testing. Is more a health investigator, figuring out what's your why. Like, so important, protein to amino acids to neurotransmitters, and people don't understand it starts up north, how we are in that parasympathetic state when we're eating to be able to digest, and not, multitasking 10 things and chewing really fast, and, not even digesting your food properly. But like you pointed out, stomach acidity needs to be 1.5-ish to 3, right? So we need that acidic environment for that protein to break down into those amino acids in our small intestine. So I think that's a big part when people start eating all this meat, is also, how are you eating? How are your digestion processes, so you can get that? And it's so important to look at, what you're eating, how, when, and why. But, the protein, dividing it up, my point was, how do you get that in during the day? Because it's really hard for people, like, "Oh, I have one egg and, half avocado." I'm like, okay, I know people that eat 8 eggs or something, and then I was doing turkey Swiss cheese slices the other day, and it's like, okay, 10 grams for 2 slices. Well, if I'm trying to get 40 grams of protein, I got to eat a lot of slices. So how do you find people when you're working with clients or with Paleo Valley, Wild Pastures, how to get that protein in a day and how much to break it up? And talk a little bit on that part, because I think that's confusing for people to figure out, how do I get that much protein in?
Oh, totally. I love this question. And for me, I usually I try and get 30 grams of protein at a meal. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon kind of talks about this 30 to 50 grams of protein. So a lot of times I eat 2 meals. So what that means is, when I break my fast, sometimes, and I've been doing our turkey sticks a lot, just because that's just where I'm at. I just let my body kind of choose what it wants. But I'll do like 4 of those, and maybe a hard boiled egg, and then some vegetables, and maybe an apple, right? That's kind of the meal. So I try to get 30 or 40 grams protein. And then my second rule is I snack on protein. It's just like, I will have like a little bit of dark chocolate here and there, but when I'm hungry, if I'm actually hungry, I will want to snack on protein. And that's what I do to kind of get at least 10 to 20 more grams throughout the day. And then at night, I do this like epic green shake, and it has a really high quality protein powder with like 25 grams of protein. And then I also add collagen, which is not the same. We can talk about that in a second, but that has about 15 more grams. And then I'll add a raw egg. So this shake has like 50 grams of protein. And then I will have, a really nice piece of maybe steak, a grass-fed steak or something, and then some vegetables at night. But it all comes down to breaking my fast with a ton of protein, and then having a really big shake in the middle of the day, snacking on protein. And then of course, Wild Pastures, if you do the meat delivery service, they're just sending you really high quality protein. And so you just put them on Saturday, like in the bottom of your fridge, a few cuts, and then they're just right there for you. Or you make deviled eggs. Deviled eggs are one of my favorite things. It's not a particularly high protein food, but you can still, it's something delicious to just snack on all the time. So beef sticks, turkey sticks, hard boiled eggs, I eat tuna and salmon, some really, really high quality, obviously wild, caught. And yeah, that's how I make it work. It's protein is kind of like the staple of every meal. I don't eat more of it than I eat of vegetables, but it is always there in an abundant amount.
Yeah, I think, getting full and spreading that out so you have time to digest that food is so important. And then for me, I always say, no, I don't do well eating heavy meal at night. So I stop eating 3 hours before bed, and my bed is like 8 p.m. because I get up at, 5 in the morning to work out, and I'm just an early bird, which I found out my chronotype. I'm exact lion chronotype. If everyone looks at their chronotype.
I do too. I am too.
Cynthia Thurlow and I were like, we're like, hey, early bird. I was reading over because I just got a cool Gucci ring for my birthday. I just got fixed. It's a lion's head. And I was looking at lion's chronotype. Like, that's exactly me. Morning person, wear out at nighttime. So I don't do well with a heavy meal at night. So I stop eating usually weekdays, Sunday to Thursday, about 4:00. But it's just, maybe that's when you add the bone broth, or have, like, you guys have bone broth protein powder you can add in a shake, because I have to have easy to digest food at night because protein is harder and longer to digest. And I have a slow system that if I eat a steak at night and then go to bed, I'm having a horrible sleep, and I'm having that food just sitting there when I'm sleeping. So I think figuring out where your timing is, your meal timing, and proper digestion, and how you can really break that food down is important. But I think it is hard for women to get 100 grams. It's just so hard for them when you look at their food log, and Chronometer is what I use often, and look at NutriSense and really look at the whole picture. It's just fascinating how much of a struggle and an area of opportunity for a lot of female athletes.
I love that area of opportunity. And yeah, I wore my NutriSense. I've done it several times, and I'll tell you, I had to be so much more restrictive before I learned this protein trick, because my blood sugar could go out of range. But if I add 30 grams of protein, my blood sugar stays really nice and steady. So it was actually so liberating to see that, wow, I can really positively impact my metabolic health simply by just adding something, right? Yeah. Adding really high quality protein to a meal. I just like that.
And I think a lot reminds me of Rob Wolf, what we podcasted with him beginning of the year, and just how important of, testing out your carb tolerance. And carbs are so evil to a lot of people. And that's, eating berries and root vegetables and real source carbs is what we're talking about, more paleo type of carbs versus refined flour and packaged foods, processed foods as your carbs. So I always have to explain, carbs, real food carbs, are not evil. It's just, timing them in, as we talk about. And Dr. Leon says, you have to earn your carbs, where to place them in post workout, and, evening time might be best for a lot of people. So it is like what carbs and protein, and how to match their macros to balance their blood sugar, as with Keto Mojo or NutriSense. And so it's so individualized. And that's why I love, having all these tracking methods might be overwhelming for people, but it's really good experiment to narrow down what works for you, because you are a unique individual.
Yeah. And I was just ascribing to keto. I think this is probably where I had my transition out, was that I saw, oh, wow, I can eat just really high quality protein and these whole food carbohydrates and still maintain pretty good blood sugar and feel really good. And yeah, and I put most of my carbs at night because they help me sleep. But yeah, everybody, like you said, everybody's body is going to be different. There had this really cool study out of Israel, and Rob Wolf talks about it in his book, where they put like a blood sugar monitor on everybody. And some people responded better to cookies than bananas, and your microbiome and your level of fitness and, your genetics and everything else comes into play to have a very unique blood sugar response. But yeah, typically I haven't heard anyone ever say that adding 30 grams of protein could do anything but positively impact their blood sugar, unless, you have metabolic derangement otherwise.
So that kind of ties in your viewpoint. Are you, into that we need to be in nutritional ketosis all the time, or kind of cycle it in now, or just not at all? I mean, to goal to burn fat. What's your thoughts on that these days?
I love that question. You know what? I have both genes for Alzheimer's. And so I do think it's, I cycle in and out, but I did find that there was a point when I was like, I don't think I feel that good. And I feel, like my reproductive health or my periods were getting a little bit shorter. I track those, and yeah, I just wasn't feeling as good as I could have. And that's why I started focusing more on the protein. So I think it's very wonderful for people, obviously with epilepsy, or, you know, who are going through a cancering process, or if you're working with someone like a practitioner like Dr. Naisha Winters. I think there's a lot of value in having that metabolic flexibility, but I've also seen a lot of practitioners and experienced it myself where it doesn't seem to be the goal for me all the time. I think I want that, like maybe twice a year I go in for a few days and then I come back out and I do more of this protein and vegetable centric.
Yeah. It's always so interesting to me because it just shows that how unique everybody is. And I always like to look at people's genetics and look at, you know, your carb tolerance, because people get stuck in these camps. And I'm part of this keto endurance Facebook group page people can join for athletes that my friend Stephanie started. But so many people want to stay in ketosis on these long bike rides and long runs. Like, why? You know, isn't it your goal is to be metabolically flexible, burn fat, and then switch back to carbs when you're, you know, hitting it hard, and then switch back to burning fat as an athlete. And then at rest, we should be burning fat, but we want that metabolic flexibility. But is it an athlete, you know, unless you have health issues like epilepsy or cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, do you need to be in ketosis all the time? And I think more and more people are saying, that flexibility, keto flex, as Ben Azadi says, that you're in and out of it and cycling in like 6 days on, 2 days off, whatever it is, or throughout the day, or unintentionally, organically, intuitively, you're just eating by what you feel, especially if you're matching your nutrition with your exercise that day, you might be in and out. But is it important for us to showing ketones all day long, every day? And what's, you know, that's always such an interesting conversation for me.
Yeah, I love that. I think I achieve ketosis more in these times that I'm in with fasting.
So that's an intentional, you know, ketosis, just fast. And I think Rob Wolf, I always love what he was saying is like, you know, looking at longevity and looking at lifting weights and fasting and eating real food, that you don't need to do these prolonged fasts as you do if you get a lot of the benefits of growth hormone, and just go work out appropriately and, you know, don't eat before bed and all that. So anyways, I wanted to kind of talk more about, so many people, as you said, meat is bad. And, you know, a lot of people is like plants and meat's bad. And then I get people that their doctor says their kidney levels, their GFR is low, that they can't have meat. What have you learned, and what are you finding out being in more of that, you know, Paleo Valley world, Wild Pastures, eating grass-fed quality meat? What is your viewpoint on what is appropriate, and what's kind of your argument towards, you know, animal-based versus plant-based?
Oh gosh, I think for me, I just think that we need both. I think that's that's how we've evolved. And of course, if you look historically, people in different regions ate more plants, right, near the equator, and people in, you know, the Arctic and the Inuit, they're eating more animal source foods. But I do think for me, an ideal diet includes both. I think that there can be a period of time where you do vegan for a little bit and a period of time where you go completely carnivore. And I know people with levels of gut dysfunction, autoimmune illness, sometimes they benefit from a more carnivore approach. But for me, I think we need to meet in the middle and try and have the gut health that allows us to eat both, and that they both provide nutrients that the other does not, right? Dr. Van Vliet did an analysis of like a grass-fed burger and a plant-based burger, for instance. And what he found was, when you use this metabolomics analysis, that I think 90% of the metabolites within the food are different, right? And I think, you know, you're going to have taurine and anserine and carnosine and carnitine and vitamin D3 and heme iron and nutrients in that burger that you can't get elsewhere. And then the same thing applies to the plants, right? You're going to get vitamin C and a lot of phytonutrients that typically you're not going to get from the meat. And so, yeah, if we can just combine them, then we can, I think, increase our chances of getting all the nutrients that we need in a very bioavailable form, because we didn't even mention that. But a lot of the times when you have nutrients in plants, they can have anti-nutrients attached to them. Their bioavailability is lower, their protein digestibility is lower. And so again, I just, for me, it's a both. It's mixed.
So I know you guys, Paleo Valley has green. So many people are against plants because of the anti-nutrients that are more of a carnivore base, like keto carnivore, strict carnivore, and carnivore healing your gut. And that again goes back to cycling it out. Like I have a client that his friend's doing carnivore and lost weight, so he's doing it. I'm like, yeah, it's great, but shouldn't you cycle it in now? Is it good, long term? And tying in what you said before, look at your ancestry background. Like I'm Northern European. What did my ancestors eat? And I love looking at that when you're personalizing a nutrition program for clients. But what about, plants? And people are scared of the lectins and oxalate phytates. That's like, all right, there's no vegetables. If I talk to Sean Baker, there's like, or Paul Saladino, there's no vegetables that are good for us. They're all shit. And we shouldn't eat any of them, but we can have berries and then you can have meat. So what's your kind of take of the anti-nutrients part of vegetables that is better to have just like a Paleo Valley type of green, super green powder, or certain vegetables that are okay to eat, then you say not to eat? What's your thought on which type of vegetables are not evil?
I love that question because I love Sean Baker and I love people doing what they need to do to feel their best and sharing that, right? For me, the goal is, I think the anti-nutrients are a concern, especially when you're going to try and get all of your nutrients from plants. Okay, then we need to really worry about it because you don't have the animal products that are going to come up and provide those in a much more bioavailable form. But in terms of no one should eat them ever, I think I raise question with that. I mean, we see in so many trials the benefits of fruits and vegetables consistently, right? And I think that, like you said, there's a lot of reasons that we have gut dysfunction today, right? And if you do have a level of gut dysfunction, certain plants, lectins in particular, wheat, foods like that, are going to be very problematic for you. And I think when it comes to like gluten or wheat or grains, that it might not be a good way to go for most people, maybe in moderation. But when it comes to, tomatoes or, an eggplant and nightshades, if you have arthritis or pain issues, inflammation, maybe that's a food group that you should take a look at. But I think if you don't, then trying to have the widest variety in your diet possible is, I think, best case scenario. And then rehabilitating the gut, just like you do. I'm an FDN practitioner too. And you have to look at all the various things like, how are your enzyme levels? How is your hydrochloric acid? Do you have dysbiosis? I mean, then look at kind of figuring out what are your weak links and fixing them. But that being said, our greens powder was created around the basis of getting wheatgrass out of the greens powder, because wheatgrass can contain a lectin called wheat germ agglutinin, which some people believe is as dangerous as gluten. And it definitely, I had wheatgrass the other day just because I was testing something for my CGM and it destroyed my gut. And if you see these greens powders on Amazon, you will see a large percentage of the people in the comments and leaving reviews do notice that they have a level of gut dysfunction afterwards, because it's a lectin and it attaches to carbohydrates and it can kind of create gut dysfunction and get in the way of vitamin D activation and things like that. So we created one with spirulina instead. And so spirulina and then just 23 fruits and vegetables in a powdered form, in a very digestible form. And so, if you're someone for whom raw fruits and vegetables, or wheatgrass is a problem, our greens powder is a really nice way to add stuff. And also then maybe cooked vegetables, soups and stews and broths and, adding vegetables in that way is a second kind of phase. And sometimes, applesauce, just things that are more broken down. But I think I believe people who say they can't have vegetables and that it bothers their system and that they're benefiting. And then I think there's also people who can do both. And I think ideally we could, we would have both plants and animal foods. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, that's how I found out about the Paleo Valley superfoods greens, because I know I did my Vibrant Wellness Zoomer panel and I cannot do wheat, and not just gluten, but anything with wheat and wheat grass. And then I figured out, athletic greens, no offense to, we still have athletic greens, but I stopped using it because of wheat grass. And I was trying to find, what do you take if you can't do wheat? And it totally makes sense why you created that product, because there isn't much out there if you can't have wheat. So it's hard to find if you are reactive.
And I think there's so many different degrees of quality when these greens powders, but what a lot of people do is add a huge amount of these greens powders because they're really cheap. So from a manufacturing perspective, you want to have those in, but I consistently have gut issues. And when our company was really young, it was primarily geared towards people with some sort of digestive issues. And so, we thought we have to give a greens powder for people where it won't just make them feel like their gut just got ripped apart.
So not to talk too much about products and not selling anything, but just the importance of health. And I started eating red meat just a few years ago because I was hanging out with all these keto carnivore people at a low carb cruise and then on KetoCon and Paleo Valley. And I started eating meat in Austin a few years ago, 2019, and felt amazing. And it was like, oh my gosh, I kind of secretly was eating my barbecue red meat in Texas without people knowing that I haven't eaten it since red meat since I was 13 years old. So then I felt so good from it. But then I also know my nutritional deficiencies, a lot of them, everything was low in, was in meat, animal products. And what a lot of the products have, or liver, organ meat, was always on the list of, if you're low in this, eat this. And liver was always on the list. I'm like, I'm not eating, I'm just, just started eating meat. I'm kind of animal phobic, eating raw meat. And then to me, the organ capsules that you guys have is what I started using, because I'm not going to eat liver. I'm not going to eat all the different organ meats in it. I've tried different ones, and this has, again, I'm not selling your products, but it's so amazing how it's not, doesn't taste like, I don't even, I'm just taking a vitamin pill. I say to people, it's like, does not feel like you're eating a bunch of whatever's in there. I don't even want to know. Just, I trust what you're doing and making, just, cross off what's in there and just tell me the vitamin and mineral list and not say the ingredients, and look at the nutrient profile instead and take those a few days a week, because it's so amazing how much nutrition you get from eating organ meat.
Yeah, it's funny because the number one worldwide nutrient deficiency is iron. And in the 1930s, three actual scientists got a Nobel Peace Prize for the discovery that liver could cure anemia. And so I know a lot of times today you do iron supplementation and various other things, but I found really good results in myself and my son and other people I've worked with when just increasing the amount of liver. But you're right, it's pretty gross. I tried every way to cook it I could possibly imagine when I was pregnant, because I knew how nutrient dense they were. I couldn't make it happen. So we got grass-fed liver, heart, and kidney and put them in capsules. So anyone who wanted to benefit from organ meats could, just they didn't have to taste them, and they didn't have like liver burps. It's not weird at all. But there was a really cool piece of research that just came out. Have you ever heard? Do you know Dr. Ty Beal?
No.
Okay, so traditionally these nutrient density rating systems look at, they demonize saturated fat and they demonize food for having calories, and they look at other nutrients that meat might not contain. But when you look at the nutrients that most people are missing in middle and low income countries, like you said, vitamin A, folate, zinc, iron, ones that many of us are deficient in today, of the top 7 foods, it's liver, heart, kidney, spleen. I think grass-fed beef is number 10. And so you're right. These are like nutrient powerhouses. And for people not to be eating them, I think they're just really missing out. So yeah, that complex. You can also, I've heard at US Wellness, there's like a liverwurst that people really like if you're into eating it and you want to try it. I've also heard like soaking liver in milk for a while will kind of reduce the taste and the ick factor. And also chicken liver is a better like entryway organ meat. But if that just all sounds too overwhelming for you, capsules, do the capsules. Just make sure they're from really high quality animals and like our organ complex.
Well, that's what I think people don't understand, the importance of quality meat and how much you need to pay attention to that when you're doing organ meat. I mean, that's just awful for you, I'm sure, if you have like eating organ meat from something that's totally toxic. Yeah. And we're already overwhelming our liver. And so then we have all this more toxins that we're eating in our food. Is just so important to, what we say, you are what you eat and you are what you're able to digest and absorb, and how important that is. But what have you found the quality and how important that is for getting quality source animal meat? Because you guys are making the beef sticks that I love for traveling and eating when I need food, but Wild Pastures, and what do we need to do to really pay attention to the quality of meat we're getting? Why is it so important?
That's such a good question. I'm actually doing a dissertation on that very thing right now. But first, I'll just say, for most animal agriculture, there's pretty big problems environmentally, right? We know that it's polluting our groundwater, polluting our air. Animals are not treated well. They're not able to self-select diets, right? We just like animals, can prophylactically choose foods that make us feel better. And when we just give animals concentrates, like we rob them of that opportunity, which is why a lot of them end up getting sick. Then we have additives, antibiotic resistance is a looming global threat, right? And if we continue at this trajectory using like 70% of the antibiotics worldwide in our animals, we could see a day where they don't work. That's not a fun thing to think about. Ractopamine and on and on. And but when it comes down to the nutrient profile, I think it's really interesting. So we don't want any of that. We want to support farmers who are not using antibiotics and pesticides and things like ractopamine. But then it also, depending on how the animal is fed, you can change the nutrient profile, sometimes really dramatically, specifically in dairy and eggs. This is really dramatic in terms of like the levels of vitamin A and vitamin E and the omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid ratio. We're going to have a lot more of the anti-inflammatory omega-3s. And then when we have pork, it's funny, conventional pork is a highly inflammatory fatty acid ratio with a 35-1. So we want about a 4-1 ratio and below. So when you're eating conventional pork, know that is very high on the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. But one of our farmers actually did an experiment where he did 50% grass and then 100% grass and then no grass. And he was able to take the ratio down to like a 5-1 when it was just fed grass. I know, that's so dramatic. Yeah. And then my dissertation's been on beef. So this is just a big topic with a lot of nuance, right? It depends on where the animal's raised, the soil conditions, the cut of meat, the genetic breed, and on and on. But we do know nutrients change, fatty acids change. We're going to get more omega-3 fatty acids, and we're going to get a better ratio. Some research has also shown we're going to have more antioxidants like glutathione. There's also longer chain saturated fatty acids. These are really interesting. A lot of people have probably heard stearic acid is kind of the neutral, like cholesterol not raising fatty acid that's higher in grass-fed beef. But then there's also these longer chain fatty acids that actually reduce cholesterol and seem to be protective. And these increase with the more grass that they're fed. And then we have secondary compounds. I'm so excited about Dr. Provenz's work and Dr. Van Vliet. So all of these phytonutrients that we typically associate with plant foods, when animals are fed grass, diverse forages, those nutrient levels increase and sometimes can rival those found in plant food. So the last piece of the puzzle, though, is like, if these nutrients are in higher quantities, does that appreciably affect human health? And there's been trials that suggest it does, maybe in terms of lower inflammation and triglyceride levels. But Dr. Van Vliet is actually conducting a trial this fall to look at if you eat a grass-fed burger or a conventionally raised burger or a plant-based burger, does that impact your inflammatory levels after the meal? And so there was one trial done on Australia that looked at wild kangaroo meat versus confined animal feeding operation meat. And when you ate the meat from confined animal feeding operations, you had more inflammation, but it's not a cow to cow comparison. So this will be the next step in really delineating how much it matters. But for me, I think it makes a huge difference. And also in the metabolic health of the animals, you see things like mitochondrial dysfunction, insulin resistance, and lots more stress in these animals when they're not fed a diet of diverse forages and things. So for us, we source from all regenerative farmers here in America. A lot of meat services, grass-fed, they fly it in from New Zealand, which is, I understand why. But I think we're robbing America of the opportunity to restore our soil and to give Americans jobs. And so we only source from American regenerative farmers who are using animals in a way that restores the environment, sequesters carbon, builds topsoil, restores water holding capacity, and all of those things.
Yeah, I always wonder why everything comes from New Zealand. It's like, why? They have a lot of land there that's beautiful and pristine, but is ours just so toxic we can't do quality farming? It's just so damaged.
It's because, it's been more popular over there. New Zealand has had this infrastructure in place. And in America, around the 1950s, we kind of took off on this direction to increase the efficiency of animal. And I think there was great intentions there, but we just didn't have the incentivization for our farmers. And that's what we're trying to do now is like, no, people really care about grass-fed meat and the environmental footprint.
So is that more what regenerative farming is all about?
Yes. So yeah, this is such a crazy topic, right? Because grass-fed is not the same as regenerative, is not the same as organic. So when you're looking at a store, know that all cows are grass-fed for the first 6 months of their life. And it kind of, then they go to feedlot or they don't. And when you grass-fed is not regulated, so they can in fact be finished on grain, right? You can look for the American Grass-Fed Association label. They're going to come in and actually verify, I think it's every 15 months, that people are adhering to this grass-only type practice. And then you have organic, and that can mean they're fed organic grain. That can also mean they spend a portion of their lives in confinement. So depending on your values and what matters to you, that's different. But then we have regenerative. Now, regenerative is actually looking at ecological health, right? How's my soil organic matter? Is it sequestering carbon? Is it building biodiversity in the soil and in the habitat around, and measuring that, and then making sure that it's improving, right? So a lot of people are focused today on sustainable. We want everything to be sustainable, but right now we've lost about, 50 to 70% of our topsoil. And there's estimates that we might, 60 years from now, not be able to grow our own food. So we can't sustain that, right? So regenerative is about going above and beyond, which is exactly what we need to do, because we've been degrading our soil and using extractive practices that are taking more out than they're putting back in. So regenerative agriculture is just about that. It's one way to ensure that we are restoring our ecosystem and bringing in a new habitat for animals and holding. A lot of people don't know this, but it's not that we need more rain. It's that we need healthier soil to hold the rain. And we're at a point too where our nutrient levels in our food is lower than ever, but it's not because the nutrients aren't in the soil. It's because the fungal biomass, like there's fungi and there's bacteria that take the nutrients, make them available to the plant, and then share them with the plant. And it's that infrastructure that has been broken down by extractive and chemical agriculture. And so regenerative agriculture restores that health of the soil, which enables our nutrients in the soil to get into the plants, to get into the animals, to get into the humans who need them most. So regenerative agriculture is amazing. And research has even shown it can sequester carbon. And the most interesting thing is there's research to show that compared to a plant-based burger, a regeneratively raised beef burger actually sequesters more carbon and is more environmentally beneficial, at least on the one farm in Georgia, than actually eating a plant-based burger, which I think most people don't quite understand yet.
But I'll throw in there, because I love getting grass-fed burgers out or when we're traveling or something to go out. I love burgers, lettuce wrap. But when you say a burger, a lot of the restaurants do not just have beef in there. I'm finding there's we were on this cruise, low carb cruise. I got sick from a burger patty. It's like, what is in there? So you have to a burger doesn't mean just beef. I think a lot of them add stuff into their mixture to make a burger. So a burger is not always a burger of grass-fed meat.
Yeah.
Or meat.
Good to know. And if you're in the Denver area too, we actually just started a burger restaurant, and I promise you that is just beef. So if you're looking for just beef burger.
That's what I said in the intro. I was like, hey, they have a new burger place. We need one over here. And it's like Solana or Encinitas somewhere. They need one.
Do you know what? We were originally inspired by Pure Burger, right?
Oh, yeah.
We were there, and then we moved to Colorado, and we're like, where is the amazing burger like they had in San Diego? So yes, I mean, hopefully one day we'll be over there.
Yeah. So you said something a little bit ago about the animals when they're fed wrong, have mitochondrial damage and have the antibiotics. And so what happens when we eat meat from animals that are sick?
Yeah, that's what we're delineating in that research. So there's been a lot of, we're looking at nutrient levels, right? So we're looking at vitamin A and E, and those things really change. And now we're looking at metabolomics analysis, which looks at those secondary compounds. But these preliminary trials saying, okay, does that matter to human health? That kangaroo trial showed, for some reason, there was higher inflammation when we ate an animal who likely had signs of metabolic dysfunction. Other trials have shown more triglycerides, and then we have trials in cheese, pastured versus conventional cheese, and we have less inflammation with the pastured. So it looks like it does matter. And then it might matter for your inflammation, your levels of inflammation. Dr. Van Vliet's research with the plant-based burger, conventional burger, and then grass-fed, regeneratively raised burger, it will kind of make that a better case for or against that. He's also doing a trial to look at if you ate an entirely regenerative diet versus an entirely conventional diet, I think it's for 28 days. Will that change your health? So I think it matters. I think, and also beyond that, I don't think you can really separate the health of the planet from our health, right? Even if we're looking really granular, like in this 1 day window, are our levels of inflammation changing? It looks like they will, but we don't know. But if you scoop or you zoom out, if we're destroying our environmental health, right, we are not going to be able to be healthy, right? The soil is the basis of our health. If we're degrading the soil with the animal practices we're using, I think that we are ultimately degrading human health as well.
And then you look at what Dr. Zach Bush talks about, the glyphosate and how that damages everything in the runoff water and the streams and the lakes and the oceans. Damage from those crops of the so much to talk about. It's such a good, fascinating topic to think about, the plants and the soil and the whole, I was listening to the other day a podcast on, the animal, like why we can't eat the certain plants because they give off those anti-nutrients and how they want to give poison to people that eat their babies. And it just fascinating about plants and animals and soil and how the whole environment works.
It is. And there's just so much for us to understand, right? So phytates, right? It looks like for some people they have anti-nutrient but there's also like studies being done to show that they have health benefits. And so I think and there's this hormesis, right? Something in a small dose is very different than in a large dose. It's exactly like exercise, right? So I think it's fascinating. And I think everybody just needs to educate themselves as well as possible and then track your own health, like you said, and make your own decision.
Well, I always say, the more is not better, less is sometimes more, but the Goldilocks effect for everything. And that right dose of hormetic stressor that your body can fight it off. And so like Paul Chek, for example, do the 4-day rotation diet. Don't have that food every day. If you have it once a week, it's not going to maybe cause as damaging to your gut, to your health. If you rotate it in and out and cycle everything, like cycle your workouts, cycle your keto, cycle your nutrition. And like Dr. Anna Kabeka's new book, I talk about the menu pause has 6 or 5 different food plans that you do for 6 days or more. And then you push pause, reset, and switch to, I'm going to do carnivore, I'm going to do plant. So I just actually recorded a little mini podcast on this new female athlete mapping thing I'll share it real quick. It's super cool putting all this information together. So I'm putting for each phase of the female athlete's hormone cycle, your hormones, exercise type, metabolism, but nutrition, and like Dr. Mindy's fasting window for women, and then Dr. Anna, do more keto green. This is where you do more carnivore. This is when you do AIP type of diet. This is when you add more carbs, do carb up diet. And really looking at how our body temperature changes with aura ring, how we're, what day of your cycle, if it's higher or lower, heart rate variability, sympathetic to parasympathetic. So it's so fascinating when you can look at what are we collecting data from NutriSense, from your aura ring, what is all this information saying, and then seeing how that cycles for a female, hormone cycling female, premenopause, what that will do during your cycle and how you can map it out, really match your nutrition to your hormone days of your cycle and then going into your nutrition and all that. So it's total geeking out, but then how to tie in, I need more iron days 1 to 7. I'm going to have more of a carnivore based diet. And then luteal phase, you need to add those more carbs and vegetables and have those progesterone feeding foods and then estrogen feeding foods during ovulation. And so really cycling in everything that we're talking about is in and out, not just the same program, same workout program, same nutrition program. We got to mix it up each week, each month, by the season, variety, I think is so important. So I love what you're saying and sharing.
I love that program. That looks amazing.
I'm trying to create it on Training Peaks, but we write workouts for clients, for athletes, but then put that in there. And so then I can map their workouts, when to hit heavier weights, when to do more endurance training, when to do what Dr. Mindy says, a nurture phase, like days 25 till your cycle begins again, doing more yoga, restorative exercise, and then how to pair that with nutrition. And I think that's so important that for females, especially, we just don't want to eat the same every 30 days. We really need to vary it. So I think, looking at tying in Paleo Valley, Wild Pastures, for example, of what to eat, when and why and how is really important to map that with your exercise, but match it with your hormones is so amazing how you can really do that.
I love that. And it's beyond like amazing. It's just like, it's so liberating, right? So I know I can not fight my body at the last week before my period when I want to eat more carbs. I just need to embrace that. And
that's what I say. It's intuitive fueling, intuitive training. And we just listen and honor that, honor your body's red flags and not ignore it. Cause I think I was so, that driven, ambitious person that I got my health issues in 2013, but it didn't just happen March 2013. It was for years, I was ignoring those and pushing past that and training, not anything with my cycle. And I think it's such new research we have and all these biometrics like an Oura Ring and NutriSense that we can really optimize our health and performance and longevity if we can pay attention and collect this data and figure out how to use it to our advantage to improve the aging process and balance our hormones and create homeostasis in our body and not have metabolic chaos.
Agreed. Cool. It's really exciting to me too. And that's, I don't know, I'm just really glad we connected.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I have a discount we'll put in the show notes for the Wild Pastures is growing a lot. My delivery man said they're having even more than one delivery guy in San Diego. So you guys do you know what states you are in or where that's available?
Oh yeah, we are nationwide
Awesome.
We founded it in 2018 and it was kind of a local effort, but yeah, now you can order it anywhere in the United States. And you're right, we're growing, we're adding more and more warehouses and more farmers. So, and you can choose, you totally customize your box and it comes in 15, 25 pounds and yeah, and you can put it on pause or not. So we're super flexible. We just want to make your life easy, but yeah, we're available everywhere.
And then Paleo Valley, I'll put links and maybe do a blog on the products, but what are your top products to suggest for athletes? And there's apple cider vinegar one, there's the organ capsules, there's the greens, there's bone broth protein. There's so much to look at besides the beef sticks. Cause we always talk about the beef sticks, turkey sticks, but any favorites?
Yeah, obviously the beef sticks, they are our number one seller. I would have never seen that, but yeah. And then we are coming out with like a whey protein for people who are able to tolerate that. We have a really high quality collagen protein. I didn't mention it before, but organ meats are not only nutrient dense, but they've shown this anti-fatigue factor in animal trials where animals who eat organ meats, they just keep swimming, and some of them had to be taken out at the end of the trial because they had this vigor. So I just think organ meats are very, very important. The greens, like you said, if you're unable to tolerate most fruits and vegetables or whatever, the greens are kind of a nice segue. The mushrooms. So we have really high quality mushroom supplement called Neuro Effect that was geared towards, your brain health, but it contains cordyceps, which they also call cordyceps. It has this like energy enhancing stamina building effect as well. So you might also benefit from something like that. But we have so many new products coming all the time. So many, and electrolyte, like a whole food electrolytes, just all the things. So you can always just check in and
I love to make a protein shake. I call it more superfoods, but because it's so hard to what to take, but I love the bone broth protein and adding, it's great that you guys will have a whey or a beef protein I like, because I can't do stevia. So trying to find good quality protein with high leucine without stevia is my personal challenge.
Yeah.
But how to put that in and then add a half a frozen avocado and add the mushroom adaptogens and add some maca and ashwagandha and just have all this to help heal and recover from workouts, but just daily stress we all have and help our gut health, like colostrum and glutamine, and just have it all in. So it's nice to have good quality ingredients.
Yeah, our whey will actually have colostrum in it. So and I think it's mostly monk fruit, but I'll have to double check on that. But yeah, we are trying to create and hopefully ideally a beef, and all regeneratively sourced, of course, so we'll have the whole protein, the collagen protein, and then, whey is great for building muscle mass. And
that's why I'm all about the leucine, the post-workout in those whey protein. So just to finish up, how do you manage your health with so much going on? You're in school, you've got like 3 companies. How do you do to not go crazy and have metabolic chaos yourself?
That's so good. That's a good question. I'm pretty stringent about the timing. So in the morning I wake up and I have really normal family time. I have a son and a husband, and that's just our like golden time. And then 6 to 7 hours, I just work straight through. And then that is just very focused. And then at night, I just really relax. On the weekends, I do not work. And that is possible because I have an amazing team, right? I don't have to do every single thing like I did in the very beginning. I feel like you can only keep that up for so long. I had my little newborn baby and I was like shipping boxes, and like, that is no longer my reality. It's because of these people that are on my team. So that's how
you built up an amazing company with amazing team. And I look forward, we'll have our meetup barbecue here at my house, Casa de Pots, September 10th. So we're excited to kind of meet with everyone in person and share some meat from Wild Pastures. We'll barbecue up and really have everyone connect in live action in San Diego area, those that live around here. So thank you so much for everything you do. And you're so educated and up to date with all the science and the research studies going on. So I love that.
Yeah. And can I just say one thing about like, if anyone cooks a steak or if you cook the steaks?
No, my husband does all the cooking. I just tell him.
Okay. Well, my husband has perfected this like little steak. It is so easy. It's just you take garlic powder or onion powder, and then paprika, and then an Italian seasoning. You kind of just cover both the front and the back, and then little sea salt. And then it's just like 2.5 to 3 minutes on each side. It's so delicious. I have to share that.
That's good. Yeah. It's just the magic trick how to cook a good steak is to get the right seasoning on it. Or I like the Trader Joe's has a big old everything seasoning.
Oh, amazing.
That really goes well. And then put some garlic and onion, and then, add some nice olive oil, ghee. I like on the steak with some sea salt.
Yes.
So good. So yeah, it's my new favorite food is steak after not having it for most of my life. Now it's like I could do it every day.
Isn't that amazing? I know I hated red meat, and and I see it in my HRV too. When I have a really great steak, my HRV is high and I feel very satiated. It's interesting.
I did have steak yesterday and my HRV was back up, but that's
check it out
to collect that data too. So, all right. Thanks so much, Autumn, for time. I'll let you go back to your busy day. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank